This is what they call a pontoon boat or a kick boat. A lot of people that own these don't understand the concept, and which I'm okay with. You know, get your gear and figure it out. The pontoon boat, 2 pontoons. Kick boat, I use fins, and I have oars. Got an anchor. But when you're sitting in this boat with fins on, you're constantly kicking the water, especially in a river, because you're going rivers this way, and you're kicking away from it, so you can constantly fish one side or the other. And your feet are what generates where you're at. Oars will take me from one section of the river to another, or through white water. You know, you don't want to be going through white water sideways because you will tip over. Safety is the major thing. So I recommend anybody that gets one of these plays with it on a lake first, so they get the concept of right, left, you know what you're doing. These are fun to fish in lakes. They're remarkable in a river. The Flathead, the Kootenai, the Clark Fork, any of the rivers in the state of Montana. Even in the whitewater section, this is good, like in the Middle Fork. But you're literally fishing, 95% of the time when you have fins on. The only time I ever use my oars is if I'm going to a different side of the river, or if I get close to rocks where I don't feel confident, I put my fins up and I work the rocks, like rock gardens. I've mentioned those to you, where there are many boulders in the river where you have to go around them, and you don't want to just bounce into them. You have to have respect for your boat, respect for yourself, respect for the river. And so there's times where I will have a fly rod and just take one oar and push myself, get my feet back in, and I'm home free.
Joe, I've seen you sort of get ready for some of your trips, and you mentioned fins a couple times now. So basically, how do you? What's the whole assembly on putting the fins on?
Oh, you got to have boots. Your wading boots.
And they're like waterproof boots.
Yeah. Well, actually, not waterproof. They're regular fishing boots, and you secure them like that. They're an extension of your feet.
Okay.
And they need to be relatively tight, so they're not sloppy, because you want force. You want to be able to get yourself from one side to the other, or keep yourself in an area. So you can look over here. I've got these are. I always wear or carry a life jacket with me. My fins. These are my oars. They're 2 pieces. This is what they call an apron, which is kind of unique on that particular boat, and of course my net. But this apron sits in the very front of it. It takes me about maybe 20 minutes from if someone were to drop me off for me to get totally ready. Maybe 30, but anyway, this sits here, and when you're going down the river and you're fishing, this is where your line is.
Okay.
So it doesn't get stuck in your feet.
Right.
Then you can bring fish up, and of course this has got a measuring device on it, and so I can't lie. And it goes to 30 inches, and so I like measuring my fish, thanking him and letting him go.
All right.
And then I have 2 saddlebags. This is one of them, and it's full of flies or gear, leaders, etc. That bag here contains my rain gear, first aid equipment. Many times it'll contain stuff like a jet boil, so I can cook food. And it always has extra clothing. I always carry gloves with me. I personally fish with 2 fly rods, and I have 2 fly rod holders, one for dry fly and one for wet fly or subsurface. And subsurface is where a lot of the fish get their food. And you're going to probably catch more big fish underwater than you are hitting the surface.
So when you're putting your wet flies together, are they one fly or are they layered flies? Meaning one is sort of on the top and then maybe a yard down or 20 inches down?
Like when I'm dry fly fishing, I have, a dry fly, but I will sometimes carry a smaller fly, a wet fly, princess nymph, something beaded, underneath it, so I can have that opportunity to get a fish that wants the surface fly or one that is feeding under the water. When I do my wet fly, I usually have a bigger streamer and a smaller nymph underneath it. And I get really deep and I work them little by little, because bugs don't go really fast. They make their little spurts, and that's what attracts the fish. It's a live bait. We're replicating bait.
Right.
Like a little fish or something.
Understood. Okay, so this is the pontoon boat. And Joe, would you say that of all the fishing that you do, you probably spend most of the time in the pontoon boat?
Yeah, I fish by myself quite a bit. I take Wednesdays off, and if I can, other days. And there are very few people that take the middle of the week off. And so I usually have someone shuttle me to my drop-off spot, leave my car to a different area. But I usually fish out of this like 90% of the time.
Now, when you have the pontoon boat out, if you find an area in the river, you will actually tie up to the bank and then bank fish.
Oh yeah, yeah. If I find a good seam, like a long one that I feel I can work an area, or some rocks that I need to get out and move around, yeah, I'll pull this up on shore. Let my anchor out so it doesn't go anywhere, and then fish. I might walk for 45 minutes to an hour working the seam, but many times there will be that opportunity that you don't have to get out. You can just kind of sit and butt and move
Right.
a little bit and move a little bit.
Okay, why don't we move on to the larger boat here? So just tell me a little bit about this one now.
Okay, this is a 14-foot self-bailer. Self-bailer means if you get a lot of water in it, it comes out naturally. So I mean, if you're going through white water, it's a heavier boat than a regular raft. It's one that I do overnight float trips in.
Okay.
I've got a lot of gear area, big cooler. This is an overnight box that is waterproof. We sit on it. I have another frame that goes up here that you would like, just like this back seat in the very, very back. That's a fisherman's one.
Yes.
And then I have another one that comes up here, sits way up so the person can actually stand up and fish. And of course then you have your oarsman there. But there's been times where I've had 6 people to do an overnight trip. 4 people is good, 3 is perfect. 4, you can have 2 people sitting here, 2 people in the back, and me. If you have 5, there's usually 3 people, 2 people, and me. 6 is pretty tight.
Okay, and so when you're fishing in this, just like the drift boat, is there usually a guide type person that's familiar with the boat?
Most of the time, there again, as you see, I have an anchor rope on this, as you would a drift boat, and you can get into some areas where you can literally have 2 or 3 people fishing out of the boat in the river if you have the right area, and the flow is good.
So your boat may be tied up and anchored, like you said.
Yeah, put it in anchor, and then 2 or 3 people can fish at the same time. This is the one that I will use in the early part of the year when there's a little heavier water, and then the very, very late part of the year where it's almost de-watered, because I can pull this through most of the eddies,
Right.
the shallows. But it's a heavy boat.
Right. Now, I see that both the drift boat and the larger raft here are both on their own individual trailers that you tow around. So you just hook them up to your truck, versus the pontoon, you can just sort of put that on the top of the truck and then just float with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a car with a luggage rack, you just put this on. It's only 50 pounds.
Right.
Where these, you want to,
Yes. Yeah.
they're heavy. And
So let me ask you a question. If the seats that are in the middle and things like that, could you get another pontoon boat if you took the railings off the side on top of this one, if you wanted to?
Like to travel around
Yes.
with it? Oh yeah, I've done that, as a matter of fact. This fits right on top of this, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you strap it down.
Yes.
But it carries very, very well.
Okay, so the seats and everything will basically dismantle, so
No, you don't
you
have
could.
to. I mean, I'll just show you. This is how I store it quite often at my house. And let's say for example, you're going to take 4 people, 5 people with you. You would put this boat here, generally speaking, you know, a little bit back further, and then you would strap it down, and it's never going to go anywhere.
Right. Okay. So that takes care of those items there. But I see on the back wall we have a couple of other items. What are those about?
Those are called float tubes.
Okay.
And float tubes are, you know, I mean, before I bought this, that's all I fished out of. You know, you go to lakes, not in the river. That's pretty much a lake vessel. And especially if you're hiking into like an alpine lake and you want to have a vessel that you can fish out of.
Right.
Real easy. They weigh nothing. You can put back straps on them. You can have a backpack and put a back strap
Are they
on.
just pumped up? I mean, can you just a little pump and then that'll take care of it?
Those are presently pumped up, and you can deflate them. I don't recommend deflating them because they're so light and they're easier to manipulate when they're fully inflated.
Okay.
This particular one is the original, and it's a round float tube. This particular one is a different design. It's just more comfortable, more room. You know, I bought it because I had a friend that didn't have one, and I was lending in my other one all the time.
Right.
Yeah, fun. They're fun to fish out of. If I'm going to, you know, just a real quick float, like a couple of hours in a lake, even Foy's Lake outside of Kalispell, I might take one of those because I'll just throw it, throw it in your rig. You just carry it down. There's no more assembly except putting your boots and fins on and going out fishing.
Okay. Let me ask you about the rivers themselves around here. Let's say the Middle Fork and the North Fork up at Blankenship Bridge. What's usually the flow of water up there? So if a person is fishing, how far will they travel in a period of time, like an hour?
The water, I think, runs about 3 miles an hour.
Okay.
I mean, and that's just sitting there floating.
Okay.
That's not rowing or anything like that.
So if you're fishing and you're going from bank to bank and hole to hole and taking your time, then a three-mile float might take you a long time.
Yeah, it takes me a long time for a 3-mile float. I've spent 8 hours on 3 miles.
Right.
And I just like, you know, really working the holes. And if I do well at a hole, you know, there again, people read their books and they go with people. Fishing a hole, you're coming up to and you fish close to your boat and then a little bit further away, then you get into some of the quicker water, and you might even go back upriver a little bit, or you might go downriver a little bit. It can take a long time to fish 100 yards.
Right.
I mean, if it's really good fishing, it can take in 100 yards 3 hours. You know,
okay.
I mean, it all depends on how good the fishing is.
Wait till next year now. Okay, so let's we're going to go inside with Joe and look at some of his actual fishing gear and his tying area. So we'll join you in there. Thanks, Joe.